Police and military members of Reddit, what is something you realized about society as a result of your service that you didn't notice before? The only sign of being a good person is being a good person. People like to say, oh, that person has X trait. He's a good person. None of those traits pan out. Religion, education, money, status, race, politics, electability, sexuality. I met plenty of straight-up assholes in every iteration of every category there is. Nearly every iteration of every category also had strongly good people in it. There was virtually no correlation. There's a problem we like to refer to by saying that if you're the prettiest girl in the whorehouse, you should expect to get If you're good at your job, great. You'll get to do someone else's job too. When things need to get done, regardless of whose responsibility something is, the tasks will fall to the people who can do them, the high performers. So you end up with all of these high performers who get burnt out because they're doing their job and picking up all of the slack that falls on their shoulders. In the military especially, it's frustrating when these high performers who carry most of the load are compensated and treated the same as their peers who don't add as much value. The military is many things, but a meritocracy it is not. Many from this top group leave the military to pursue something where their disproportionate contribution is rewarded. You then end up with the leftover group of people from the middle of the pack, who were never really high performers, finding themselves in leadership positions, through attrition of the actual best. The middle risers, simply because they end up being the best of who's left after the high performers leave. A lot of people told to join in army and you will be a real man, a better person, but when I join in the Brazilian army I noticed that the bad guys still bad guys and the good guys still good guys. Is not the society or the environment that change a person, is the individual will to be a good person that change you, and a lot of people just put their responsibility to be better into the environment, using it as a reason to not try improve yourself. There's a lot of gray between the black and white of following orders. Being on deployment overseas made me appreciate signs and announcements in English. Being in Dubai or India and not getting lost because of the English signage is something one wouldn't think important until they're lost and need to make it back to ship on time. So now when someone complains about seeing signs in Spanish or French in America, I'm more prone to calling them out on their bullshit. Military member here to say people walk slow. New Yorker here to say military members walk slow. I got a better perspective on how most civilians are absolutely terrible at teamwork. Military grade sells to the civilian people. All those who served, are serving know that that item is a complete piece of trash. Before army, everyone in military service is a hero. Extinguish anyone who thinks otherwise. After army, I've been wrong, for a very long time. Thank you for your service, and my response thank you for your support is really just an obligated, scripted back and forth that usually means nothing to either party. I know there's no ill intent meant by it, but I feel like 90% of the time, people say it when they feel like they have to, not because they feel genuine gratitude. I hope that doesn't make it sound like I think I deserve gratitude just on account of being a glorified government employee, but I can definitely tell the difference between someone who genuinely believes I somehow keep them safe, and someone who is saying because they think they have to, and I wish those people felt comfortable not saying anything at all. I live in a small southern city, and the rampant virtue signaling around the military is so annoying. For example, the Memorial Day service at our national cemetery wasn't even half full. Average age in the crowd was about 92. There's still a war going on, and no shortage of fresh graves in that cemetery, but in a city with 250,000 residents, maybe 100 actually took time out of their holiday to attend the service. Meanwhile, down at the lake, every other truck is plastered with some variant of support the troops, Punisher, Nuga strong bumper stickers. Whatever, I think it's great that you can skip the solemn remembrance part of the holiday and get straight to the barbecue and beer, but please spare me the sanctimonious bullshit of your bumper sticker patriotism. Everybody everywhere is only a couple days away from living in the third world. There are only 9 meals between mankind and anarchy. Alfred Henry Lewis. Most people are not suited to authority. The more they have, the more they abuse it. Both genders. Most people aren't that smart, and the dumber they are, the dumber they think smart people are. Men are cruel, women are wicked. Groupthink is real, is everywhere, and is dangerous. Military service as conscript reminded me that there are lots of different people in our world. In my country every man has to go to army, so one can see the whole age group at the same time. Usually people live in their own high school, university, work environment bubbles. But in a conscript army, you can see and meet everyone outside, form your own bubble. If you care about doing the most good for the most people and are vaguely competent, don't avoid responsibility, see the bigger picture and take advantage of opportunities to make the world a better place, if only very slightly. If a good person does not take the helm, there are incompetent, selfish, sociopathic bastards lining up to take it. So if you are a clever cookie with good intentions, rise to the occasion, even if you don't believe in the institution, especially if you don't believe in the institution. There are so many smart people who pride themselves on seeing through the cruelty of an institution but do nothing to make it better. They are no better than the sheep they scoff at. They are complicit in what they condemn. The world is made tangibly better by competent people who are willing to play the game to an unselfish end, and those are few and far between. That everyone has preconceived notions about the military, good or bad, and any information given to the contrary goes in one ear and out the other, also applies to just about everything else. People don't like to give any additional thought to an idea once they have settled on it as their personal belief. TBH, thinking about it bums me out a lot. The military is a huge organization and a supreme example of the American melting pot, with people from literally all walks of life and all ideologies, and making any generalizations about service members beyond they're all human is pointless. Not all service members are human, some are dogs. As a soldier, they made us swear an oath to uphold and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. They sent me to Iraq, which I want unaware of ahead of time, spent a year over there and didn't find a trace of our freedom over there, came home and all people wanted to talk about was how much of our freedoms we could vote away so they can be safer. That was a bit of a slap in the face to see. It's a job, military, regardless of how many people like to sensationalize it. I blame the media like movies and stuff, but it is so incredibly cringy and annoying to be praised and thanked any time it gets brought up. Majority don't see combat, and any non-combat moss is pretty much working a 9-to-5 job with the exception of deployments. Former Marine here. The biggest thing I learned is everyone wants to be the tip of the spear until that spear starts getting used. I had a good few maintainers and armorers always talk about how they were gonna test for MARSOC, scout sniper, or whatever, and then 9 out of 10 would lose their shit when it came time to deploy in a relatively comfy ass boat or airbase. They'd whine and moan because they didn't want to leave their families, friends, kids, and in the case of one guy, WoW Guild, I never blamed any of them for not wanting to leave what they held dear. Mind you, I just found it funny how all these commando wannabe dudes would always seem to do that, while the guys who were happy just fixing planes would almost always be like, sweet, I get extra pay. Society. Everyone in the Air Force is a pilot. While this may be useful for picking up members of the opposite sex, in all other contexts it is mildly annoying. By the way, I fly a D-35K. People don't make decisions based on self-preservation both physically and mentally. We all seem to tend to have self-destructive habits and behaviors, and it makes finding true happiness, true love, and true passion in life very hard. Some people will practically worship the ground you walk on when they learn of your service. Thanks, stranger, I guess. But all I did was maintain firefighting equipment. Other people will immediately develop a hate boner upon learning of your service, and even in person, very quickly reach the point where they start calling you baby killer and village raper. I don't know who hurt you, stranger, but all I did was maintain firefighting equipment. I've been military for the last 23 years and counting, and have been involved in detainee ops for both the Taliban and Al-Qaeda. Their lower-level folks, like ours, aren't inherently evil. The vast majority have just been taught a different perspective. The military has taught me that there are large, valid differences between different cultures, and instead of bombing or degrading each other, maybe we should talk about it. Oh, and I've learned that the most staunch, right-leaning military supporter often has zero inclination to find out what we do or actually sign up. Want to support a troop? Cover me. The lack of cohesion will be our downfall. Nobody knows how to work together, and the infighting allows greedy assholes to take advantage of us. There are a lot of up people, in general, but there are a lot of up people who enlist. It seemed for every normal "hey, I want to have some adventure and earn a little college money" you had 3 guys for whom it was either enlist or work the worst, lowest skill job imaginable. The sheer number of guys I met at RTC who not only spoke of rape as if it were no big deal but who spoke in a way that made me wonder if they had already committed a rape or were actively planning one was staggering. When I made E4 and got assigned to do barracks inspections, the number of weird things I saw people doing with their mostly private space was appalling. One dude kept a jar full of piss and fingernail clippings in his fridge. We'd ding him. He would go off about how this was his religious practice and we had no right to ding him. He'd escalate the issue and be told he needed to throw away his piss jar. This went on for a month, weekly inspections at least. He ended up getting busted for CP. My roommate in a school was making fake CAC cards and selling them to God knows who. Made a lot of cash in just a few weeks, go figure. You know what he spent it on? Porn. The guy bought a laptop and just filled it with porn. Bragged about how much he spent on porn every month. I didn't have a great childhood. My family was on food stamps at various times throughout. I thought I was up. Then you get out there and realize how up some other people are, and it sort of puts it into perspective. Of course, then you realize how many people like that are out there. How many of them are wearing uniforms and appearing respectable. When I was a kid, we were always taught to treat police, firefighters, military, or virtually anyone in a uniform as a safe person. When I became a parent, I didn't feel comfortable giving that same advice with such a blanket authority, especially to my daughter. The news media have no damn clue what they're talking about. Seeing the classified side of the news really provides a lot of context into the foreign policy decisions made, and always makes me laugh when either left or right news try to paint what supposedly happened. The America people think that they live in is an illusion, but it's actually real on most military bases. By this I mean almost everyone is polite and respectful to everyone they meet when walking about, regardless of whether or not they're wearing a uniform. When people imagine the small town feeling from old TV shows where everyone says hi to each other and people are willing to go out of their way to help people they don't know, that shit is real on most posts. I'm not saying things are perfect on every military base I've been on, but they're always clean, safe, and most people are genuinely polite to each other. Most people are lazy and weak. I'm also lazy and weaker now. I realized the deep misunderstanding of what goes on in the military, and to my much greater horror, the deep apathy that goes on for most people. When people find out I was in the Marines, they're totally down to hear about how hardcore things were, but mention some of the grievances that come from being lower enlisted or the complexity of the military actual mission, and their eyes glaze over. And them coming to you with some political opinion regarding the military is usually an insane can of worms. Replying pretty late to this one, but most people that advocate for war, or say we should go to war, etc., are not in the service. Like, dude, you are younger than I am, 36M, and talking to me about how we need to go to Iran and give them a good ass kicking. Or, in other words, you should go to the Middle East again, get shot at again, risk your life again, so I can put some shit on Facebook, but I'm not going to go. I just retired after 27 years in the Air Force, and people back home still say, how was the Army? PTSD is real and sucks, and society thinks every vet with PTSD is gonna lose their shit and talk back to the voices and be uncontrollably violent to everyone. When I park in a veterans parking spot, some grocery stores, etc. have a parking space dedicated to veterans, and somebody says I can't park there because I'm not the veteran. My husband is. I'm single, female, and the veteran. Same goes for parking in a disabled parking spot, and some genius comments I look fine and should be more respectful of disabled persons. All because I don't look disabled. The parking placard is obviously my veteran husband's. So, basically, I learned that some of society thinks it's all just one big army. Military service is for men. If you have PTSD, you are violent, should be avoided. And if you did go to war, you aren't disabled unless you are missing a limb. But, thanks for your service. Ever hear of Sunday Christians? There are Sunday Patriots, or whatever the equivalent name is. People who pay lip service to service members, veterans, but then don't know, care, or want to know anything beyond that. In other words, patriotism that is very one-dimensional and myopic. That everyone around the world wants the same thing: safety, food, and shelter. Being polite will get you a long ways in any society. The real cost of war is suffering, and most of the people who suffer aren't the combatants. It's the civilians who have nothing to do with the conflict. In Afghanistan, it's a small minority of the population that's fighting, but the bombs we drop on them and the IEDs they plant kill a lot of kids and wives and grandmothers and just regular people trying to live. When a soldier gets PTSD, it's not just the soldier that will have nightmares for the rest of his or her life. Their kids will have a more angry parent. The parents are more likely to get divorced. There are higher rates of alcoholism and drug abuse. The soldier will be less functional for the rest of his or her life. Politicians like to talk about the trillions we spend on wars, which is obviously not trivial, but the suffering of people outside the battlefield is incalculable. And this may be a really unpopular opinion, but I have a lot of sympathy for military spouses who have affairs while the soldier is deployed, young mothers who are left alone for a year, often in a place where they haven't been living and have few friends, and then are just expected to be good housekeepers and wait in a pretty sundress with their well-behaved toddlers for their hero husband to return. That's a recipe for intense loneliness. Affairs and broken marriages are pretty common in the military, and it's another cost of war that high leaders aren't interested in.